We are live, Keith.
All right, guys, we are live. This is the Sherdog recap show for UFC 269. I am your host. My name is Keith Shillan. Joining me, as always, is the senior editor of Sherdog.com, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, we got a lot to talk about. Tell me how you're feeling right now.
I am feeling absolutely electrified. I know we're going to get to all these fights sooner or later. Nobody can see your face right now. I'm working on that, but hopefully they can hear you.
Okay.
But wow, what a night of fights! Just
yeah. Let's do something different. Let's get right to the grade. I'm giving this an A plus. Like, to me, this is it would have been really hard. Like the last pay-per-view, I think that was the front runner for event of the year. I think it's passed.
I mean, in the moment, this feels like the event of the year because nothing disappointed. I mean, I was shocked by a lot of things that happened, but even the shocking things, it's not like anything just fizzled out. Some people's individual performances, obviously were disappointing. We had one of the most shocking outcomes in UFC history, but it's not like, I don't feel like anything was a letdown.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about, we had, obviously the upset of the year happened on this card. We probably had the round of the year. We might have had the fighter of the year maybe on this card. The female fight of the year is probably locked in now. I mean, everything that happened, I mean, it was absolutely incredible. So yeah, we're having a little technical difficulties because it wouldn't be us if we didn't have technical difficulties. Mostly my fault because I relied on a program. I kind of threw it up to Ben last minute, change up. But let's get right into it. Let's get to the main event. We have the chat open. Keep chatting. We'll talk to you guys all through the night. We got so much stuff to talk about. Main event, brand new champion Charles Oliveira defended his belt against Dustin Poirier. Charles Oliveira won by third round submission. The first round was an absolute incredible round. I think short memory here, but might be round of the year, was that good. Just Ben, talk to me about what happened. Talk to me about, what's your overall assessment. Then we'll get into some details, but just tell me your overall assessment of this fight.
I was amazed, and in the beginning, it was playing out more or less as I expected. I expected Poirier's punching power to be the difference. I believe you and I both had Poirier by knockout in the third or fourth round. I was impressed with how Oliveira came back and employed knees to the body and kicks to the body throughout the first round, even when he was getting the worst of it on the feet, even when he got knocked down multiple times, because striking to the body in the first round, that is a statement. It says, I think this is going past the first round, and I'm making an investment in future damage, in future attrition. That's a confident move on Oliveira's part, and it absolutely paid off. I have no idea whether we'll find out later that he bruised or broke Poirier's ribs, but they clearly took a toll. Poirier looked to be the more worn-out man, coming out for the second round, certainly by the end of the second round, since that round was a complete drubbing. And then, the finish came quickly in the third. Just a masterful performance by Charles Oliveira. Perfect game plan, followed to perfection.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, we understand we're having some video issues on my side, so it's giving me a chance to pick my nose while we talk about this. I actually took my pants off. So overall, doing some crazy stuff on my side over here. But yeah, if you told me going into this fight that one guy would wear someone out, like you talked about just wearing out Poirier, I would have guessed it would be the other way around. I would have thought about this point in third round be where Poirier started taking over, but it was the opposite. I expected Oliveira to come out hot. He did come out hot. He was pressing the action. He was in Poirier's face, not giving him an inch. And then Poirier just started, when I'd say midway through the first round, Poirier just started finding his range with his boxing, and he was lighting up Charles Oliveira on the feet. He was hurting him. He rocked him several times. He dropped him. Almost went in for the finish in the first round. Fell into Oliveira's god instead. That was really impressive to me. But what impressed me most is the narrative about Charles Oliveira saying he's a quitter when he gets tough, that he'll check out. That's 2 fights in a row. He was in some serious trouble, and he found a way to recover and to get a finish shortly after. I mean, no one can ever question Charles Oliveira's toughness moving forward because not many people can take the shots from Dustin Poirier. I mean, I've told the story before, but I remember talking to Tony Martin, who trained with Poirier for a long time. I was talking to him at a PFL, and I know we were talking about heavyweights or light heavyweights, something like that, and somebody hitting hard or something like that. And he said, "I've never been hit harder than the way Dustin Poirier hits." This is a welterweight talking about a lightweight who used to be a featherweight, and we've seen, Poirier. I mean, he knocked out Conor McGregor, he knocked out Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. He couldn't do it to Charles Oliveira. And then Charles Oliveira just flipped it up, turned into a wrestling match, turned into a grappling match. And when Charles Oliveira gets your back, the fight's over.
Absolutely agree. And it's interesting because the commentary booth, who obviously all those guys have been involved in the UFC in some capacity or another for a long, long time, were talking about the change in the narrative with Charles Oliveira. And I saw some of the reaction on Twitter, and I realized that for fans that have come along, say, in the last 4 or 5 years, it might be hard for them to believe that Charles Oliveira was ever thought of as kind of like a front runner or a quitter. Because that is, as you pointed out, exactly the opposite of what he's done this year in winning and now defending the title. Like it's hard for me to believe that this is a guy that once went down in the Max Holloway fight with a phantom esophagus injury. This is the guy that just melted at the first sign of adversity. Like if his first idea didn't work, he was kind of toast. It's perhaps the most remarkable career reinvention I've ever seen in mixed martial arts. It's just unbelievable. And
It's up there.
Even in a fight where obviously both of us said leading into this, you hate to see either guy lose, it feels good to see this guy get his vindication.
Yeah, I'm glad that you talked about like career turnarounds. When I think about people who've completely turned their career around, the only other name that really jumps out to me is probably Robbie Lawler, where at one time Robbie Lawler was brought back into the UFC just to be a warm-up fight, a bounce-back fight for Josh Koscheck, and then he goes on this run and he wins the title. I mean, Robbie Lawler at one time was thought about as a little bit of a front runner, a guy who unmotivated and this and that, and then suddenly he turns into this brawling fight of the night guy, and then obviously won the UFC title. And this is the guy who came in with a lot of hype, was supposed to be the next Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes' is a little protege. He kind of fails. People gave up on him. He looked like a mid-card guy at best for a while, and then he ends up winning the title. And that's similar to what Charles Oliveira. There was a time, I think it was, I apologize, I think it was Allen talked about the coming a long way since being TKO'd by Paul Felder when he tapped his strikes. And absolutely, I mean, the run that Charles Oliveira has been on since that moment has been absolutely sensational. It's absolutely incredible. So you're the UFC and you have Charles Oliveira, and I mean, he doesn't speak English, which obviously is always a tough sell to the English crowd. He's not a trash talker. I mean, he trash talks. He has that competitiveness in him. Obviously, saying I'm going to win. I'm the best in the world. But he doesn't take it onto the Sean O'Malley level or anything like that. How do you market him?
I think you just have to start marketing him the way the UFC has typically marketed great fighters who were non-English speakers. Like the way they marketed Anderson Silva forever. Just go on this guy's on a 10-fight win streak in the best division in the sport. He's finishing people left and right. By the way, you're on camera now, so if you were picking your nose, just make sure to stop.
I'll put my pants back on.
Yeah.
Give me the first.
Just, I think they do need to go the Anderson Silva, or obviously it was a pretty short run, but the way they were trying to sell Hayden Burrell, where Dana White would just get up and say, I think Hayden Burrell is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. Yeah. That's what they'll need to do. Just point to the accomplishments and point to the in-cage product.
Yeah, you almost and don't take this wrong way because I mean, how could you not be high on Charles Oliveira? You must have to oversell his accomplishments right now. You'd have to, because you have to have the skills and you have to have the personality, and he's not going to have the personality. He's not going to have, and then you always have that backstory, the guy that comes from, the toughest areas of Brazil. But we've already had that story. Like if he was the first one ever, and please don't think I'm trying to down talk the Charles Oliveira story, because it is anybody who comes from the toughest areas and becomes a star, like Jose Aldo, like Charles Oliveira. It's incredible, but we've heard it before. So I think you have to oversell it a little bit. Anderson Silva, to their credit, and Anderson Silva end up, learning English, speaking it somewhat, not great, but now he speaks perfect English. But at a time in his prime, he spoke, would say, limited English. But Anderson Silva also needed people to come along. Like Chael Sonnen elevated Anderson Silva. I think Forrest Griffin being that like kind of goofball, lovable guy, and then Anderson Silva doing what he to do, elevated him. And then they also had Dana White constantly at every turn selling Anderson Silva as the pound for pound best friend in the world. This is the same time when George St. Pierre was around. And it was always Anderson Silva was the answer.
It was, and part of that is because George St. Pierre didn't need any help selling himself, I think, is part of it. But even then, Anderson Silva was an underwhelming pay-per-view draw until he got a nemesis to thrust him into the spotlight.
Yeah. And I think that's going to happen with Charles Oliveira. But for the time being, Charles Oliveira has the right guys, because the next two guys are Justin Gaethje and then Islam Makhachev. I don't think a Oliveira Makhachev fight will sell yet, but I think if Makhachev becomes the champion and he has his moment, then they can kind of take the Khabib Nurmagomedov unbelievable, wins every minute of every second of a fight, kind of, the new Khabib. I think that will leap him up into the stardom. I don't know if that's yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, and that's what it might take. But you make a good point. Whoever came out of this fight as the champ, their dance card is full for the coming year. There is so much that needs to happen.
But we could probably both agree that there was no we probably both can agree that the UFC didn't want Charles Oliveira to win. They wanted Dustin Poirier to win.
I think you're probably right, but I don't think this is one of the ones where they really, really hoped. Like when Jorge Masvidal fought Kamaru Usman, they really, really, really hoped that Masvidal won that. Here, I think they're probably okay either way.
Well, I'm going to disagree just simply with the fact that he has 2 wins over Conor McGregor. So they still have that rivalry, your wife slipping in my DMs and all this stuff going on. The third one, even though Poirier won the trilogy, the third one was kind of, some people still think it was fluky. It wasn't a clean win. It was an injury. They can kind of sell that part of it. That's why. But on the flip side, you could still say maybe you didn't lose because you have your champion who could bump off of the new stardom of Poirier. Oliveira can get a little bit of that rub, and then you still have Oliveira for your super fights down in the division, like lower in the rankings. So maybe it will work out for them.
It might. And the thing is, Poirier is not going anywhere. I think he's going to continue to hover around the title picture for the foreseeable future, and his stardom is in no way diminished here because his legions of fans are used to seeing him deal with adversity and get beaten down and come back stronger and still continue to be kind of the, very likable figure he is.
So let's turn to that for a second. So obviously Poirier is extremely likable, but he didn't, last time he lost for the title against Khabib Nurmagomedov, a lot of people remember this. Remember when Poirier was kind of almost suggesting retirement after he lost to Khabib? Mm-hmm. But he wasn't mentioning that now. He was talking about, he made a donation to Charles Oliveira. He's making a donation to something to, do with his country and his area and, doing all the great things that Dustin Poirier does. And he didn't sound too defeated. He was more analyze what he did wrong.
Well,
But you're kind of stuck now. And then I just think about his legacy. This guy that has been so close. And we talked about this on the preview, is that this is a guy that needed this moment. He needed to get the title. So it's like the last piece of the puzzle that hasn't been filled in. And like I feel like it's I feel like it's like Dustin Poirier is like the last season of Game of Thrones, where we all love it, but we want more.
yes, I'm agreed on all counts. One thing I think about Poirier is, okay, he made those noises in the wake of the Khabib fight and didn't hear, because Poirier still looks around at the top 5, 6 guys in this division, and Poirier thinks he can beat every single one of them. He thinks he can beat Charles Oliveira next Saturday. He thinks he can beat Makhachev. Thinks he can beat Dariush, Gaethje. When he lost to Khabib, he was talking about retirement because he was thinking, we run this fight 10 times, it looks like this 10 times. And believe me, I'm not saying that as any knock on Dustin Poirier. I think he is one of the just true, I mean, it sounds cheesy to say, but one of the just true warriors in the sport. But Khabib Nurmagomedov does that to people. He makes these fighters question all their life choices.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think you made a good point about, like, yeah, Dustin Poirier did not have the performance he wanted tonight, but he had moments in this fight. And if you told me that they rematch 3 months from now and he wins by first round knockout, like, that wouldn't shock me at all. And then if you told me that not only does Dustin Poirier win the title 3 months from now, he defends the title 5 times over the next 2 years, like, that wouldn't surprise me either.
No, it wouldn't surprise me. It's like I said on the preview, man. Lightweight, it didn't get better by Khabib leaving, because you don't get better by losing the most dominant fighter in the sport, but it sure got a lot more interesting.
Yeah, Poirier will be a sad story if, and I don't mean like over his career, but I mean it'd just be sad for MMA if Dustin Poirier doesn't ever hold a UFC title.
Agreed.
And I'm not talking about the interim. I'm talking about the undisputed championship.
I completely agree.
I mean, that's what we were talking about. And Charles Oliveira is obviously extremely disrespected and underrated. And I mean, we look, he was the underdog in this fight. Both you and I both picked Poirier to win. And then I was looking at our rankings, Sherdog rankings, and we had Dustin Poirier ranked above Charles Oliveira in the world rankings, despite Charles Oliveira being the champion. I looked at other people's sites, and they all did the same thing. And still now you have people talking about Islam Makhachev the best in the world, or he's the next champion. And I was watching Twitter and people were saying, oh, Gaethje's going to get it. Gaethje's going to knock him out and this and that. Like, what does this guy got to do to get some respect?
That's a great question, man.
But that might be the angle. Maybe he becomes the Brazilian Rodney Dangerfield of the lightweight division, or the Rodney Dangerfield of the UFC.
I mean, he kind of is.
Yeah.
Adam Duffy in the chat, I would say no relation, but that would be a lie. He's my son. Said Poirier has talked about going up to 170. How do you see him against the top 5 / Usman?
Can I pause that?
Yes.
And answer that question in a little while, and you'll know why.
Sure.
Let's do this. Let's have a quick assessment, because I actually think the main event is the least thing we got to talk about, but I also want to give it its due diligence. Is there anybody you think goes to the mat with Charles Oliveira that you'd be confident that he wouldn't submit?
Now that Khabib Nurmagomedov is gone, no.
Okay. And I'm not saying he would submit everybody, but the whole point is, like, the fight hits the ground, Charles Oliveira could find a submission. How about Islam? Do you think he could submit Islam?
I think he could submit Islam. I'm not picking it. I think of all the guys that are kind of lumped in as the next Khabib or his true successor, I think Islam is the closest. And the whole thing about Khabib is he's just never even really been in trouble on the ground, at least in his last dozen fights. Like, he's the guy forcing his opponent into situations he doesn't want to be in, even when those were very good grapplers and very good submission artists.
Yeah, and Bass throws out Dariush too, which we can't be calling Charles Oliveira the Rodney Dangerfield and not mention Beneil Dariush, who's actually fighting Islam Makhachev, and no one talks about him. I mean, that's a former world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so yeah, we probably shouldn't look by him. I'm going to give you an assessment of the division, and you tell me who am I forgetting about. What I kind of have categories, and I think, well, yes, the UFC may have lost tonight in the fact that they wanted Poirier to win. I think it's still better options if Poirier would have won, but this is how I look at the division. Obviously, you have the champion. You have three clear contenders, top contenders in Justin Gaethje, Islam Makhachev, Beneil Dariush. You have Chandler and Poirier, who's been so close. They're right there. 1 or 2 good wins. They're right back in the picture. You have aging veterans who probably look like they're washed up, but you never know, in former champion Rafael dos Santos and Tony Ferguson. You got the new kids on the block that are kind of, making their way up the rankings. Gregor Gillespie, Rafael Fiziev, Armin Sarukian, Joel Alvarez has been impressive. Matthews Cameron. Like, those are kind of the new kids on the block. You could always have Max Holloway jumping up, especially if he loses a third time to Alex Volkanovski. And then, of course, there's some Irishman that always has the trump card. That's a pretty healthy division. Well, I'm glad you said that. That's good. I'm glad you said that, because we might debate something a little later. But okay, what do we do with these guys? So let's start with the champion, Charles Oliveira. Okay, and that was who? Okay. Oh, okay. So we had the same thing. I did the same exact thing. If you Well, it was a couple years back, but yeah, I had the same exact way. So I have Justin Gaethje fighting for the title next.
Beautiful.
Let me ask this: Who do you, and neither one of us are big gamblers, but who do you think would be favored right now?
Between,
Gaethje and Oliveira.
I think Oliveira would be at this point.
I think so too.
Like, because I watched that fight, and as awesome as Justin Gaethje is, he is still too susceptible to his opponent's offense.
Absolutely.
Like, whatever his opponent does well, they're going to get some licks in on Justin Gaethje. It's why all of his fights are awesome, but it's also kind of what his cap in the division is.
All right, let's move on to Dustin Poirier. So now, obviously, he's fought for the title twice now. As you mentioned, there's a lot of guys ahead of him. He's probably fourth. We're doing the phone call. He's fourth or fifth now to get the phone call. We're doing it not who. If you never watched this show before, we don't do who we think is going to fight next. It's more of, we run the UFC. Nobody has a saying. We're the ultimate pick. What do we go with? Who are you matching Dustin Poirier with next?
I would love to give the guy a little bit of a step back. It's been a brutal couple of years. I mean, if I'm keeping him right in the picture, I'm giving him the winner of Makhachev versus Dariush. If I want to give him a little break, I give him the loser of Makhachev versus Dariush, or I give him one of those young guns you just mentioned. Like, let him fight Joel Alvarez or Armin Sarukian. If Holloway ever came up to 155, if he did that, announce that first quarter of next year, you instantly make Poirier versus Holloway at lightweight again.
Yeah, the problem is we've seen it twice already.
Yeah, but the first one doesn't count. You're trying.
Okay, fair enough. The first one.
You're right. You're right. Make the fresh matchup.
I have such a hard time doing
the Alan McDonald in the chat just says Dustin versus Chandler.
Yeah, that's always fun, and that's probably, if I'm guessing, that's probably what's gonna happen. Poor Michael Chandler. That guy can't get a break.
Nope.
Start your UFC run. Dan Hooker, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, and now Dustin Poirier. I'm like, holy moly! No more fighting guys like Daniel Strauss or I don't know who's he fighting in Bellator. I can't remember. Daniel Strauss was a weight class below, so it wasn't him.
No, it was Will Brooks.
Well,
Obvious. Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to think who else. Some of the guys here.
People in the chat are
Hey,
saying Connor again because they're assholes.
yeah, honestly, that very well could be the case. I think they may have been. I don't know if you listened to Ariel Helwani's show this week. They had John Kavanaugh, obviously Conor McGregor's head coach. He threw in a mention of the Diaz trilogy fight as an option. I still think that might be Conor's next fight. So that's what I would do. If he has to stay at 155, and I'll give you a name I'm going down. I don't want to see Chandler lose again. I'm giving one of the new guys, and I'm gonna put Poirier against Rafael Fiziev. That's what I would do. Okay, but I want to go back to Adam Duffy's question. This is what I really would do. I'm making Dustin Poirier go up to 170, and I'll put him against Colby.
I mean, I don't hate that. I think 170 is a tough proposition for Dustin Poirier's championship potential in general, just because it's so stacked with wrestlers at the top.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
But outside of like Kamaru Usman, I want to see him against any of those other dudes. Give me him against Colby. Give me him against Gilbert Burns.
Yeah. The other reason why I would do Colby is simply because they're both kind of in a similar situation. They're both down in the division now. I mean, Colby's lost to the champion twice, Poirier, and I know he hasn't lost to Charles Oliveira twice, but there's just so many guys in contention that are next in line. So he's falling fourth or fifth down. Why not get a huge fight, co-main event of a pay-per-view or the main event of a fight night, having those guys talking? Devo says that he believes Colby would kill Dustin Poirier. If Colby uses his wrestling, I agree. But
I want to address something here. Sword Song says, Colby's a wrestler, bigger, stronger. Colby is absolutely a wrestler. He's one of the elite wrestlers in MMA. Yeah. He is not bigger than Dustin Poirier. I guarantee you that Colby Covington and Dustin Poirier walk around at the same weight, or if one guy is bigger, it's Dustin. I've been in the room with both of these men. Yeah. Dustin Poirier is fucking huge.
So I've never met Colby Covington in person. I have met Dustin Poirier in person, and he looks like a light heavyweight. Mm-hmm. It's shocking that he makes.
Yeah. He's not that tall. It's just how thickly muscled he is.
Big, yeah. I'm very, very surprised by it. So yeah, I actually would guess that Dustin Poirier might be bigger than Colby Covington.
Like Dustin versus Wonder Boy, like all these fights that you thought you never knew you needed in your life.
Okay. All right, let's move on because we have a lot of fights.
Well, did anything else interesting happen on this card?
Yeah, let's get to the co-main event. So in the co-main event, Amanda Nunes fought Juliana Pena, and as everyone expected, Amanda Nunes just absolutely knocked out Juliana Pena in the first. Right? That happened, right? Oh no. Juliana Pena won by second round submission. What? Just talk, man, because I can't talk.
Okay. I picked the main and the co-main event wrong, both of them on this card. In both cases, I suspected pretty early on that something was afoot. Like, Nunes she looked sloppy on the feet because, I'm just going to say this. Juliana Pena is a terrible striker. Connor Rebush, who, did previews for Sherdog for a while. He does the Heavy Hands podcast. He's one of my favorite people to listen to learn more about the striking arts.
He's absolutely great.
He said that someone who's been in this game as long as Juliana Pena should not throw punches like where her elbows sink. She just looks like she's swimming and not even a very good swimmer at that. And yet these things are getting through and hitting the greatest fighter on the planet in the face over and over and over again.
Yeah. So let me tell you my assessment of this fight. I was watching it, and I agree with everything you're saying. I agree with everything that Connery, but she gets like chicken winged arms kind of come
Yeah.
out a little bit. Aaron Blanchfield, we were saying the last time that for someone who's very aggressive, that she kind of had that going, and then it's gone now. This fight, but we'll talk about that obviously later on. It's gone. Well, that's what you expect from a girl who's 22, right? A fighter who's 22 to make big improvements. As you mentioned, Connor said that Juliana's been in the sport for a long time. That shouldn't happen. I think Amanda Nunes was trying too much to get a walk-off knockout. She kept throwing the right hand, which is her money punch, which is, I mean, she's flattened Cyborg with it. She's hurt Holly Holm. She's hurt everybody. I mean, first punch she landed on Megan Anderson in the last fight. I think she was trying to flatten her. I think she was trying to get one knockout, and she gassed herself out.
I think you're right, and I think the ground exchanges in the first round took a lot more out of her than maybe she was expecting or planning for. Because if you're planning on getting a walk-off knockout, then anything that happens on the ground is kind of an unplanned for expense in terms of your gas tank.
That's right. So I feel like, and I'm gonna age myself, and I know both you and I are in the same age group, but some of the people in there might not get this one. Rocky 3, when Rocky was fighting Mr. T's character, Clubber Lang, and the second time they fought in that movie, and Clubber Lang is throwing these big, huge power shots, and Rocky's taking it, and he's getting tired. I felt like that's what was going on, and there's I have so many questions. We'll get into the magnitude of the upset. We're going to get into all that stuff, but Juliana Pena said something in the lead up to the fight, and we kind of all blew it off. But she said, I have spies in her camp that are saying, teammates, that she's not even training. Can there be any truth to that?
I wouldn't jump to that conclusion. I still think of that as something that Pena just said to try to get under Nunes' skin. I think it's more, if anything, is more an indication that Nunes at 135, like at least in fights where she's having to do work and she's not in just complete control of the proceedings, her gas tank is still a little suspect. Like sure. she had no problem walloping Felicia Spencer for 5 rounds because she was 100% in control of what happened basically every minute of the fight. Here, in that first round, there was the exchange on the ground where the UFC booth appeared to miss it, and they just were acting like Pena was turtled up. And it was 45 seconds later before they realized that Pena had been working for a Kimura that whole time.
Oh, and yeah.
Nunes having to escape from that, I think, took a lot out of her. I mean, again, if they rematched immediately, and I have the feeling they probably will, I think Nunes is going to be a big favorite again, and I'll probably, 3-1 instead of 9-1, and I'll pick Nunes again. But if anyone was going to beat Nunes, this had to be part of it. At 135, it would be make her uncomfortable, make her work, put her on her back foot if you can, and see if you can test that gas tank.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about being 135, the weight cut. And if we historically look at 135, she has not had the one-punch knockout power like she's had at 145. We're talking about Chris Cyborg, I know Megan Anderson wasn't on one punch, but it was the first punch landed that kind of
one punch, and Megan wished she was knocked out.
Yeah, that's right. So there's all that. But yeah, she got really tired. She got very flat-footed. A lot of arm punching going on, and credit Juliana Pena. Like, regardless of how bad her striking is, you can't question her toughness. I mean, she stood in the pocket, and Amanda Nunes was still connecting with a lot of shots.
Yep.
Like, I was even saying to my wife, we're both kind of going crazy watching it, and I was saying, well, don't be sold by the commentary team. This isn't just one-way traffic. Like, she was rocking Juliana Pena even when she was tired, too.
Yep.
They just, every time Juliana Pena landed a shot, they were going crazy. Every time Amanda landed a shot, it was kind of ignored.
Yeah.
So let me tell you what I was doing in the first round. The first round, I was writing notes on the greatness of Amanda Nunes. I was writing, uh, the last time we did a breakdown, I said every single fight you see a new tool, and if you remember, I was like pointing out the fight where you see her do things. I did the similar things with Dustin Poirier. So I started doing this with this one, and I go, oh my god! Like one, her power just jumped right out every time in the first round she touched Julian Payne, she was dropping her. And then the second thing I wrote was, oh, suddenly she throws calf kicks now. So this was going to be, I was good. I always try to think in my head while I'm watching the fight, what angle we're going to take during the recap show. And I was thinking, are we going to debate, forget female GOAT, is she just the GOAT? That's where I was going. I went from 180 to, is she the all-time GOAT to, holy shit, Juliana Pena just beat her in one round difference. So tell me what was going through your mind when Juliana Pena pulls this upset.
I immediately went to, where does this fall on the list of the biggest upsets I've ever seen? And like there are a number of different ways you can define an upset. Like just on the straight numbers, it probably won't be the biggest upset even in UFC title fight history. I think Sarah over GSP is bigger. But then there's also the just subjectively, like how shocked were you?
Sure.
And this is about as shocking as they get. Somebody like
Absolutely.
I was going back and forth with another MMA media member on Twitter about it, and they asked this or Holm versus Rousey, and I said, "Oh, this absolutely," because as soon as Holm versus Rousey was over, I said, "Okay, if they fight 5 more times, that happens every time." Holm just exposed Rousey's shortcomings on the feet. Here, I'm still shocked, and like I said, if they fight again, I'm probably picking, the mythical motivated Nunes to get things back in order.
Yeah,
but it's way up there.
So. Who was it? It was Austin pointed out that one of his buddies, I want to give this guy his name. I want to give him his credit. Mike something. I'm sorry. I'm trying to scroll through. There's a lot of comments. Guys are chatting up real good. I apologize. I don't have the guy's last name. I missed it. But he actually called that Juliana Pena was going to win. So shout out to that guy. Way to go. I always question these kind of predictions because I don't think people actually think they're going to win. I think it's more of I'll make this prediction, and then if the champion wins, no one really remembers that I picked this person to win. But if the big upset actually somehow amazingly happens, no, I'm the man. But you still did it, so good for you, Mike. I'm sorry, I'm still trying to find his name. I probably just grazed right by it. Oh, right here, Mike Siaki. I apologize if I said his name wrong, but way to go, Mike. I did not pick it. I thought Amanda Nunes was going to knock her out in like 2 minutes. You talked about, my level of shock is way up there. Like I think about Chris Weidman versus Anderson Silva. That's a fight that gets thrown out there a lot, and that was probably the best call I ever had for an upset. I actually picked Chris Weidman to win. I did not pick him to win by a little short left hook. I picked him to win by wrestle. Like that's I expected the Chael Sonnen type fight.
Mm-hmm.
So Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey is one, but there was always that avenue for victory. I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest female strikers of all time in Holly Holm. The only fight that I think of, TJ Dillashaw versus Renan Barão seemed like a massive upset at that time.
Yes.
So that one's up there for me. Especially how, dominating with the entire 25 minutes. But the only fight that I was probably more shocked than tonight was Matt Serra versus George St. Pierre. And I kind of got into it with Drake Riggs, and Drake's fantastic, and he said biggest upset in UFC history, and I kind of said, I still think it's Matt Serra over George St. Pierre, and he kind of said, no one was picking Juliana Pena. I'm like, I think people remember the Matt Serra, George St. Pierre, and in hindsight, they don't remember at that time because Matt Serra got that upset. He won the title. He gets a little more shine in his name than he did before he won that title, if you know what I mean. This was the guy that was out of the UFC who won a reality TV show with a bunch of if you remember what it was 8 fighters who was getting a second shot.
Yep.
bunch of has-beens. So basically, I want people to realize what I'm trying to say. Imagine we took the cut list over the last couple weeks. We took 8 fighters that we added to the cut list. They did a tournament. The guy who wins the tournament. By the way, people forget this. Matt Serra beat Chris Lytle in a absolute terrible fight, and that most people thought Chris Lytle should have won. So he won a controversial decision in a terrible fight, and then knocks out George St. Pierre, who was, considered the best fighter in the world. So imagine we get our fighters from the cut list. They have a little tournament, and then that guy fights Kamaru Usman and wins by knockout. Like, that's the equivalent. It's not the number 3, number 4 ranked in the world, whatever Juliana Pena was, pulling the upset.
And there's another thing to recommend Serra versus St. Pierre. Matt Serra was a 5'6" squat little leftover lightweight who had not demonstrated knockout power. He was a grappling specialist.
Good point. That's like he went up a weight class.
Like too. get to me when when Pena punches Nunes into tapping to strikes.
Yeah, it would be like who's a one Courtney Casey moving up to 135 and knocking out Amanda Nunes. Like, that was like the equivalent.
Yep.
But what I think is shocking is how Juliana Pena won. Not that she won by submission, because that was, the argument, the only way she's going to win, take her down, I'll grapple her. But winning the stand-up exchanges, tiring her out with the stand-up, that is what is shocking, most shocking.
Yeah, but, I mean, again, still not as shocking as Matt Serra flooring George St. Pierre with punches at the time.
Yeah, I am too. I am. That one's my number one. I got to address something that was brought up by Twitter by a lot of people, so that's why I want to address it. Are you surprised how quick Amanda Nunes tapped out?
A little bit, but I just think she was exhausted. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she just was like, I'm not getting out of here.
Yeah, I've seen some people say that she quit, and I don't believe that. I think she had a terrible night, and I think she'll be back, and I think she'll still be good. I don't believe in that unmotivated. I don't believe in the she's not training. I don't believe in that. I just think nobody's perfect. I mean, it happens. How legit is Juliana Pena? I mean, are you believing that? I mean, I'm sorry, but we both said that Amanda Nunes would be the favorite. Like, are we not believing Juliana Pena?
I don't believe in Juliana Pena yet. There are several. I mean, I'm sure we're going to match make him in a minute here, and we're probably both going to just acknowledge that the UFC is going to make an immediate rematch if Nunes wants it. But even if Nunes was like, no, I'll go take on Kayla Harrison at 145 next, I think there are 5 or 6 bantamweights that I would favor over Pena in her first title defense.
I'm glad you mentioned 145. So I want to put 145 on the side for a second, but we've had times where we've seen upsets, and not to the magnitude of this, other than Serra versus George St. Pierre. But I think about Frankie Edgar over BJ Penn at that time was considered a massive upset. Rose Namajunas over Joanna Jędrzejczyk. TJ Dillashaw over Renan Barão. What ones am I forgetting? Alex Volkanovski over Max Holloway. The whole reason why I brought up those 4, and I'm sure there's other ones, every one of them they were considered the underdog, was a massive upset. A lot of people believed it was going to be a fluke. It was a fluke. When they have a rematch, the rightful champion will win. And in all 4 of those cases, the rematch went to the person who won the first time. With me saying that, does that change your opinion at all of Juliana Pena beating Amanda Nunes the second time?
I'm gonna have to learn my lesson the hard way, I think.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying anything. I'm trying to find a narrative.
Yeah, I just, again, like, even if they don't have an immediate rematch, like, there are so many women in this division that I would favor to beat Pena. Like, I think Pena captured lightning in a bottle tonight, and she's got something now that nobody can ever take away from her. She's in the history books. She is the UFC bantamweight champion. There is no smoke and mirrors about it. It might have, I mean, it might have been a strange result. It was certainly an upset, but you can't call it a fluke in the sense that like somebody like slipped on a banana peel.
Yeah.
She
No.
she took the champ's best shot, came back and beat her.
Yeah, absolutely. What I find most impressive is that she stood in the pocket and slugged it out with Amanda Nunes, and she remained standing. Chris Cyborg did the same thing, and she didn't. I mean, she was able to do something that Chris Cyborg couldn't.
That might be the difference between 135 Amanda and 145 Amanda.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. So, what do you think the chances are? Do you think there's any chance Amanda Nunes says, "Listen, I'm still the champ at 145. You know, the weight cut sucks. She's, you know, you think about when she was fighting Valentina Shevchenko and the weight issues, and I remember seeing those terrible photos of like almost getting carried to the scale and whatnot. You think there's any chance she just says, I'm only gonna fight at 145, and just forgets about Juliana Pena and just, you know, fights killers? Yeah, well, I shouldn't say killers. Whoever is remaining at 145.
I think that's actually extremely unlikely. I think she
Really?
absolutely is going to want this back. I think she's going to want it back. I think she's going to train like she's never trained before. She's going to come in, no nonsense, not looking for the highlight reel, just looking to like finish this fight with as little risk to herself as possible. Like, I think it would be interesting if she just abandoned this and went up to 145, but I don't think she's going to want to walk away from this on a loss.
Yeah, I agree. And we're both agreeing the very next fight to do is just do an MAC rematch.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to get. I think we're going to get an immediate rematch.
Yeah, and I'm not one of these guys. I'm not really into immediate rematches. I think people have to earn it. And like, I don't think Davidson Figueiredo should get the first shot at Brendan Moreno. But like, Amanda Nunes is the exception.
Yeah, I mean, I generally I hate them unless there was some controversy in the first fight, like there was a freak injury or a terrible decision or a bad stoppage. But as immediate rematches go, this is about as excusable as they get.
Yeah. Before that, we're only 2 fights in, so we got to speed this up. We got a lot to talk about, and I apologize. We haven't been going to the chat as much as we normally have. We'll get to the chat a lot more, guys. Bass is saying Nunes versus Danielle Wolf next. Oh, jeez. Alan's throwing in Leah Letson. Oh my lord. Before that, Jeff Neal took on Santiago Ponzinibbio. Jeff Neal won by split decision. Ben, extremely close fight. I saw scorecards for Neal, some scorecards for Ponzinibbio. Who'd you score for?
I scored it for Neal, and I'm actually one of the few that gave Neal all 3 rounds. But
Okay.
the second round in particular was ultra close. So, I mean, if I rewatched it, I'd probably make it 29-28 Neal. But super, like all 3 of the individual rounds were pretty close. I thought Neal definitely turned on the Jets in the 3rd round, which I will talk about in a moment. You know, just let me know when to. But yeah, like it was a close fight, but it wasn't a great fight. It just felt awkward the whole time. Like I that must be the record for eye poke warnings in a fight without an actual eye poke.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad Daniel Cormier said this. Like, how many warnings is Mark Smith going to give before he actually takes away a point? Like, I'm glad that Daniel Cormier said that. I picture Gunnar Nelson somewhere saying the same thing. Like, yeah, this is what Ponzinibbio does. He pokes you in the eye. Because remember when he poked Gunnar Nelson in the eye and then knocked him out immediately after while he was complaining of an eye poke?
Yeah, it was like, I mean, I don't think you're a video gamer, but to me, like when he knocked out Nelson, it felt like Skyrim. Like he poked him in the eye, was like a bounty of 40 has been added to Las Vegas, and then boom, last witness killed. Your bounty has been removed.
Man, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
That was mostly for Adam in the chat, but yeah, it was an awkward fight, you know. And sometimes you'll get that when you got a predominantly orthodox guy against a predominantly southpaw guy. You just end up with a bunch of like kind of weird, awkward collisions. But yeah, it just wasn't a great fight.
No, but I'll say this: I thought it was entertaining, and Austin saying it was the worst fight of the night. I think it was entertaining, and it was still the worst fight of the night. But that's how high it was on this night. It was, as I gave the card an A+. I think you gave it an A+ too, right?
Yep.
I'll say this about the Neil Ponzinibbio fight, and tell me if you agree with this assessment. I feel like Pons fought the fight that he had to. He gave himself every opportunity to win, while Neil fought the complete opposite of how he should have, and he gave Pons like the opportunity to win, but he's just faster and more skilled than him, and that's why he won.
I completely agree. Going into this fight, before the Thanksgiving stuff all came up, I was like, I feel as though Ponzinibbio is taking on just a fresher, faster version of himself with more power. And that's kind of how it played out. Neil kind of obliged Ponzinibbio with the best possible fight for Ponzinibbio, and it just still wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, it just came down to, and it's kind of starting to turn into a narrative on Neil. It's 3 fights in a row, but he really didn't let his hands go. And I know it's hard to let your hands go against Stephen Thompson. I get that. But this fight is not the one that it's hard to let your hands go. You're getting an opponent who stands right in front of you, a stationary target who's not going to go away. I don't think it was good. I mean, Saif Saud was all over him saying, like, let your hands go, let your hands go. But, he snapped a 2-fight losing streak. He is ranked. What would you like to see next for Jeff Neal?
I like these guys to take on the winner and loser, respectively, of Michel Pereira and Muslim Salikov.
Ooh, I like that. So you're like saying like Neal take the winner?
Neal take the winner, Pons take the loser.
Pons.
Dev Goes Fishing says, after his sickness, Jeff has been different. I agree. I think Jeff Neal is constantly fighting like a guy who thinks his gas tank is just going to abandon him at any moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And we still haven't really found out exactly what that sickness was. Right? Like, I know he's had a health issue, but do we know exactly what happened?
I could, bug other guys at Fortis and see if, they can give me the inside dope. Because I don't know Jeff personally. I've met him a few times, but I could, text, Morono and Safe and be like, hey, dude, give me the gossip.
Yeah. There you go. Ben just telling his sources right on the show. So I like that matchup. The name I wrote down, but I like your idea too. I wrote down Danny Rodriguez. I think Danny Rodriguez deserves a shot.
I thought of that as well. Just Rodriguez has had so many wins in a row. It almost feels like he has more momentum than Neal or Ponzinibbio, even though he's not quite ranked as high. But I like that. You could point it as he's earned a shot at someone like Neal rather than, okay, Neal is back on track. Let him take on someone like Pereira or Salikov. So I like yours as well.
Yeah. Before that, Cody Garbrandt moved down to 125, and he is 0-1 at 125. Is Kai Kara France knocked him out in the very first round. Do you want to talk about Kara France first, or do you want to talk about Garbrandt first?
I'm fine either way.
Okay. To me, it was an absolute brilliant performance by Kai Kara France. I loved every single thing he did in this fight. I loved when he he was accurate. When he was landing shots, I love that he didn't rush anything. He stayed. He brought pressure to Garbrandt, but it was controlled pressure. He didn't rush in. He didn't brawl with him. He didn't punch himself out. He was using his vision, and then he just was accurate, and he couldn't miss. To me, that's 2 fights in a row that he's got back-to-back knockouts. I loved his call out. I don't think he's getting the next title shot, but just you saw what happened with Julian Pena. You'll kind of be the squeaky wheel. You get the oil. Just anytime you make the right call out, you just get a little bit more shine. And I think that's what Kara France did. You're in a pay-per-view. You just knocked out, former world champion. Call for a title shot.
I loved it too. Huge dap to Eugene Behrman and City Kickboxing.
They just continue to crush
seriously,
it.
Just once again came up with a picture-perfect game plan to beat a dangerous striker in Garbrandt. Because, well, for one thing, I normally think of Kai Kara France as a pretty good sized flyweight, and he looked so small next to Garbrandt. I was feeling sketchy about my pick. 'Cause, I picked Kai Kara France to win this one, but Kai Kara France, like, he played it perfectly because he knew that Garbrandt would probably have the speed and the power advantage, and as soon as they got in the cage together, obviously, probably had some reach on him as well. But you're right. He just stayed within himself, was really deliberate, really measured, and it ended up getting them the knockout. Because the other thing about Garbrandt is his chin was iffy at 135. At 125,
Yeah.
Kara France, where I kind of said he doesn't overthrow. He's just one of those guys that naturally has rolls and nickels in his gloves. It's like if I just keep touching him, I'm gonna hurt him. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely was, and I loved how he kept his feet. He kept his feet underneath him, though he was layered and accurate, but also generating power without overthrowing. Almost throwing with like 80, 70, 80% power, and that's all it needed to take him out. You mentioned Garbrandt's chin. You figure 2 knockout losses to T.J. Dillashaw, a knockout loss to Pedro Munoz, now a knockout loss to Kai Kara France. You have that 5-round just shellacking by Rob Font. I mean, Cody Garbrandt's still young. I mean, he's had slew of injuries and illnesses, and everything has gone wrong for this guy. Is it too early, or maybe it's too late to say this? Cody Garbrandt's a shot fighter.
He looks like it. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think of him as kind of a fun-sized version of Luke Rockhold because
Yeah.
still has all the offensive weapons, but hittable and chinny is a bad combination. And he's kind of hitting a wall here. I mean, what is he, 30? Is he even 31?
Yeah.
He's young, but where is it for him to go? He can go back up to 135, but a lot of the top guys in that division have knockout wins over him. He stays at 25. Plenty of guys can knock him out. He can't go all the way up to featherweight, I don't think. So he's in a tough place.
It has a very Hen Barrow feel to it. And I think about some other champions that have fallen off like this quick. You mentioned Luke Rockhold. That's one that really fits the mold. Chris Weidman was on a run, and then when he lost, he had that one win, I think, over Kelvin Gastelum. Mm-hmm. It kind of feels similar to Garbrandt knocking out Sun Tzu. But overall, like, there's nobody in the 135-pound division, near the rankings. One that would make sense to match Garbrandt up against right now, that would favor him, I guess. And 125 just seems like a failed experiment. Just move back.
Scott McCrate in the chat apparently wants Garbrandt to move back up to 135 and take on Sean O'Malley because that's how he feels about people that run puppy mills, apparently.
Yeah. I don't know. Normally we'll jump into that. It's 2:18 a.m. and we have like 10 more fights to do. But that is a very, very popular opinion right now. It seems like a lot of people don't like Cody Garbrandt and he gives you many reasons not to like him. I get it. Honestly, at this point with Sean O'Malley, that seems like behind him.
It does, maybe, but like we'll get to that. Because
like what you said about I believe it was Danny Rodriguez. I feel the same way with Sean O'Malley. Like right now it's just all risk for O'Malley and no reward. I mean, other than maybe he really wants to beat up Cody Garbrandt. Let me ask you this: what is more surprising, Juliana Pena upsetting Amanda Nunes, or if I told you if you went back to when Cody Garbrandt won the title over Dominic Cruz when he had one of the most amazing performances in a title fight, a true, like, it seemed like besides winning the title, like, this is a breakthrough. Like, there was it turned into, is Cody Garbrandt the best pound for pound fighter in the world? It seemed like he was on a like rocket ship to the sky, and he's going to be the face of the UFC, and like we at this point we'd be looking at Cody Garbrandt with his 7th title defense. Instead, if I told you that day that he'd go 1-5 with 4 knockouts, like, is that more shocking than Juliana Pena beating Amanda Nunes tonight?
I don't know if it would be more shocking. I mean, there's something about just a one-time event, like a huge upset in a single fight. But I certainly would have been shocked because I was all in on Garbrandt.
Everybody
He
was.
had it all. Well, for one thing, when a guy's undefeated, like they're gonna get overrated because it's hard to imagine something you haven't seen yet. Like nobody
Of
thought it was
course.
possible to touch Lyoto Machida until somebody did. Uh, but yeah, he had power, speed. He beat Dominic Cruz with hand speed. Like that was it. Cruz
Yeah.
could, as smart as he is, one of the smartest fighters in the history of the sport, could never adjust for it. On top of that, he was a good wrestler. He was young, and he just seemed kind of like a mean little maniac of a dude. Like I figured he'd have 10 title defenses. So it is shocking, absolutely.
Let's talk about Kai Kara France. So he called for a title shot. I think both of us are saying. I said no. I shouldn't speak for you. I'm saying no title shot. Yeah, you agree, or are you giving that title shot?
I don't think he's ready for a title shot because the thing is this his second win in a row?
Two.
Yeah, two in a row.
And he
And
was
before that,
losing
he
to
was alternating wins and losses. He looked great, but that may just be a Cody Garbrandt problem. I
Yeah.
want Kai Car France to win at least two more before he's really in line for a title shot.
I think it was DC that threw out the name Manel Cop. Like that works to me.
I like that too because Manel Kopp is someone else that I see people trying to rush into the title picture, and he's only like,
One fight.
yeah, it's either that or Ode Osborne for me. Either of those is a great fight, and yeah,
Yeah. That Osborne was the one he wasn't the one that Cop missed weight for.
yes.
The Ode Osborne fight.
But then Osborne,
Uh,
like looked great in winning his last one. So
yeah. And before that, Sean O'Malley took out Highland Paiva by first round TKO. We already talked about Sean O'Malley. Uh, this is how people feel. Like there's no, and this is what the UFC wants. Everyone has a strong opinion about Sean O'Malley. You either love him, you think he's skilled, you say this guy is sensational, he's going to be the next big thing. Like that's the camp I'm in, or you don't like his personality, you think he hasn't beat anybody, and you hate him. So, I this performance, he started off a little slow, but once he started finding his range and knocking out a guy like Highland Paiva, this is Highland Paiva's first KO loss in his career, not counting a cut. I was super impressed with Sean O'Malley.
I I thought he put on a great performance. I thought this was a well picked opponent for him to put on a great performance. I mean, the words target practice may have come out of my mouth on the preview. Just I didn't think Paiva was going to have anything for him. He was going to be smaller, slower, and even if things went to the ground or O'Malley ended up in a bad situation, Paiva's not a finisher. So O'Malley just literally had 15 minutes to find Paiva's face, and he found it in a lot less than that. He looked great.
And I'll throw this out of the chat while we're talking to O'Malley. Tell us if you're a believer in O'Malley or if you're still a non-believer. I'm 100% a believer. So there's something that jumped out at me as really good and something that jumped out at me as really bad. The bad thing about him is still getting his legs kicked. It's going to continue to be a thing for him. I mean, he's got the little skinny legs and he's got long legs. Obviously, he's tall for the division. It's going to be a huge target. But the good thing is just his little setups, his little traps, the way he disguises his right hand and then just snaps it over the top like he did. Absolutely brilliant how fast he is. And I like the slow climb. Like, I know a lot of people are saying, I saw like a meme talking about who he beat and then afterwards what they've gone on to do. And I don't know where I was going with this. I was saying I like the slow climb. Like, I don't think you need to rush him. Like, I like him taking one little step at a time. And it has a very AJ McKee feel to me. Mine is the undefeated part.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to put him on a continuum with Bellator fighters, where AJ McKee is on the one end, where you're like, yeah, they're bringing him along slow, but everyone can see that this dude is the future. And on the other end, you've got Michael Venom Page, where it's like, yeah, they're just coddling him because they want more highlights for the highlight reel. He's closer to the McKee end for sure.
In fairness, and I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but in fairness, Michael Page did just beat.
No, dude, I love Page. I'm talking about the popular perception. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it, and that's what's going on with O'Malley. A lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, they want him to knock out these guys. They're not giving him anybody good." I'll feel this. Let's matchmake O'Malley for a second. So he's a draw. He's a name. Probably other than the main event, and the co-main event, he's probably going to be the most talked about fighter off this card. I feel this is what I want to do. I'll tell you who. Actually, I'll let you tell me first what you would do with Sean O'Malley, and then I'll give you mine.
There's two routes. You
Okay.
either put him against a longtime contender who's falling off, and
Okay.
there may have been one
Yeah.
on the card tonight,
Oh. Okay.
like someone like Pedro Munoz. Or
Okay.
if you don't think he's ready for that yet, you put him against another streaking up and coming prospect who'll probably make a great fight with him, like Adrian Yanez or Nate Maness.
Okay. And he's called for a fight with Adrian.
He and Yanez have been jawing back and forth,
So I'm going. I'm going the first route. I'm going. I'm going with A. I'm doing agent veteran who's kind of might be on his way out, but I'm going a little more extreme. There's a point in boxing when you're trying to build up the next future star where you kind of have them face the former star who was a big name on their way out, use them as a springboard. I don't think we do it enough in MMA. You kind of get them over, and that's what I'm doing with Sean O'Malley. If I ran the UFC, Sean O'Malley's next fight would be against Frank Yeager. How much of an asshole am
You're
I?
terrible. That is, you should be brought up on like war crimes. Like, why do you kick puppies? Like, what?
Like I didn't realize until he started doing this recap show like how much of a like scumbag boxing promoter I have in me.
I mean, it would be a good name for him to build off of. Like, certainly, Edgar could test the ground game that we haven't seen much of, but we both know how it
Yep.
probably ends.
Yeah, it's good. Well, with him head kicking Frank Yeager into oblivion,
Yep.
or like front kicking him Vitor Belfort, Anderson Silva type thing. But that's it's gonna sound terrible. I do have that scummy boxing promoter in me. I also have that Bill Belichick, like no sentiment. Like it's what can you do for my business? And that's why I would have him front kick Frank Yeager. It just started him.
There we go.
And I love Frank Yeager, just for the record. Bill Belichick let Tom Brady go, so that tells you about sentiment. So that's the main card. Let's get to the prelims. We'll go a little bit fast on the prelims, though. This is a very banging prelims. We'll throw this out to the chat. Josh Emmett versus Danny Gay. Who'd you score for? And I'll throw it out to you, then I'll throw it to the chat too. To let us know who you scored for, because this was obviously the closest fight in the entire card. A lot of people went either side. Who did you score for?
I scored it for Emmett. I gave him the first and third rounds, but it was another one where, all three rounds were pretty close, and a lot of it came down to what you value in scoring a card. It's almost more a reflection of the person doing the scoring.
Yeah, when it went to the decision, I said on the 10-9 or the 10-point must system, where you mostly give it out 10-9. I said on that system, I don't know who wins. On pride scoring, I'd say Josh Emmett won based on it being so close and then dropping them. Bass scored it for Emmett. Austin Janela scored it for Emmett. Oh, just for the record, I scored it for Emmett too. I gave Emmett 10-9 the first, 10-9 third, and I gave Ige 10-9 the second. I'd have no issue with Ige getting a 10-9 in the third. It was an extremely close fight. I feel Emmett's power is like a double-edged sword for him, in the sense, obviously, it's a fight ender, it's a fight changer. If he's losing, like the Michael Johnson fight, one shot, boom, he's back. He not only he's back in it, he wins. That says when he's loading up and he's missing and he's throwing single punches because he's trying to get the big walk-off knockout punch, it hurts him.
It completely does, and it's totally the wrestler, the former wrestler who discovers he has a fastball. Like you've seen Happy Gilmore, of course, right?
Yeah.
Okay, when Happy like hits a hole in one on like a 240-yard par four, and he goes, "Man, that was easy. I should just do that every time." I think that's like every single collegiate wrestler. The first time he knocks someone out with an overhand right, he's like, "Oh wait, I don't have to like set up takedowns and work for him. I can just walk out, like
Yeah.
kind of fake a level change, and then just punch the guy with an overhand right. That's easy. I'll just do that every time."
Yeah.
That's Josh Koscheck did that.
Yeah.
Johnny Hendricks did
I think
that, and there's a little of that in
yeah.
Emmett as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of that. I think about I used to play like old men's softball, and I was always just like slappy kind of hitter, base hit, not a big home run hitter. And then there was one night, it was we had a double header, and just I don't know, the wind was right, or I don't know. I hit like home run after home run after home run this one game. Double header. I think I got up 7 times. I hit like 4 home runs. The two other ones, I hit the fence. And it was crazy. And then for the next like month, I was just trying to crank home runs every single time I got up, and I think I got out like my next 20 times. like pop up to left field or something. Just that was a new thing. Like I mean, I'd hit a home run every once in a while, but it was like, oh yeah, suddenly I was Mark McGuire and I was this big home run hitter, and then yeah, no, it just ruined everything about me. That's Josh Emmett, and it's funny because he dropped Ige in the first 30 seconds, didn't finish him, and then I said to myself, I was like, oh, worst thing that happened to Josh Emmett is dropping Ige the first 30 seconds of this fight.
Yeah,
And then I think the reason why he won the third is I felt he was obviously using the movement. I think he took away some of his power. I don't think he was throwing 100% power. I think he was throwing about 78%, and that was the difference.
I think you're right, and I think it's because he probably knew he just needed to win the round, didn't need to knock Ige out, and that's probably how he should have been fighting the whole time.
We talk about wrestling. Obviously, it's team alpha male. I mean, that's the strong, the fraternity of wrestlers. You still think in a close fight, someone in his corner be like, especially when Dan Ige is shooting on him in a close fight, like, trying to win the round, you wouldn't say, dude, how about you shoot on him? How about you win the close round? How about you sneak the takedown?
Interesting.
Just very, very, very surprising. But that said, Emmett's won 3 in a row. I mean, it's 4 in a row. It's 4 in a row for Emmett.
I mean, that's like over like a 17-year span, but yeah.
Yeah, he was out for a while, so it doesn't seem as impressive. But I mean, he's got to be on the short list for title shots, even though I don't think this was a great showing from him. What are we doing with him next?
Okay, if you think he needs a little more seasoning, but you want to put him in a fight that puts the winner at least into the picture, you make that Arnold Allen fight that fell out earlier this year. If you think he's even closer than that's already, you give him the winner of Kattar and Chikadze. Because if Chikadze beats Kattar and he fights Emmett, whoever wins that, like they're good for a title shot, in my opinion.
Yeah, that works for me too. The fight I went with was the Korean Zombie. I said I just think Josh Emmett deserves a main event. I think that'd be a fun fight. I'd go to the Korean Zombie, but like we always say, 145 you can't make a bad fight. So especially at the top of the division. I don't know how long this run of Josh Emmett's gonna go. I mean, he's up there in age, and he's against Shane Burgos, he was at least throwing combos. This fight, he was throwing single shots. That said, we probably shouldn't count out fighters because Dominic Cruz showed once again that he is a top contender in the division. As he, let me say this: Dominic Cruz lost 30 seconds in this fight.
Yeah.
When he got dropped by Pedro Munoz went in for a knockout. Every single second of the fight, other than that, he won, and he won really easy. To me, this was one of his best performances of his career. I thought he was fast, which kind of always been a knock on him. I always thought his hand speed was a little overrated. He was accurate, tons of variety. He was always guessing, generating power, big combinations. He suddenly he'd slide the pocket and then throw like a 6-punch combination. To me, he showed that he isn't close to finish, and I picked Dominic Cruz to win, but I was also ready to write his eulogy if he lost.
I picked him to win as well, but I didn't necessarily expect it to look like this. Man, one thing I've got to say is for a guy who has a reputation as a finesse fighter, and it's an accurate reputation, his whole style is built around coming up when there were no divisions below 155, and he was constantly fighting much bigger people and had to figure out a way not to be killed. But for a guy who is a finesse fighter, he is just underratedly tough. He is tough as nails. Uh, like chin, recoverability, it's all there. And of course, being
Yeah.
Dominic Cruz, he couldn't let an opportunity to cast some shade pass him by. So he made sure to thank God, who was the ref? Was it Mark Goddard? Yeah, it was Mark Goddard.
Yeah, Mark
For giving
Goddard,
him
yeah.
time to recover. But even if that's just Cruz being a dick like Cruz does, it does make me look back at that Cejudo fight a little differently.
Yeah, but if you rewatch the Cejudo fight, Cejudo had him hurt much worse than Pedro Munoz did.
Yeah, I mean he was in more trouble than he was against Munoz for sure, but it does make me think, oh man, he probably should have
Yeah,
gotten the chance to just go all the way out or recover. But yeah, but
yeah.
his
And
best
who
performance
knows?
in years.
And who knows where we'd be right now? Because Dominic Cruz would be maybe he recovers, he wins the title, then he's injured for the longest time, and he's out for the longest time, and who know who's fighting for the title, and um. So, do you think Cruz showed enough to say that he's still like title contender worthy? Like, I mean, I kind of say like, how can you not after this performance? It was that good.
Yeah, he's right there in the picture again. Uh, how far down that phone list is he? Even if he doesn't deserve the next title shot, like because he's a former champ,
He's
because of that name value, he's further up the
he,
list than he probably should be.
yeah. Most people believe that he's the GOAT of the division, so that helps too. Um, what are we doing the next? I mean, I know Marlon Vera called for a fight. Does that fight interest you, or are you going another route?
It interests me, but I think Cruz deserves something higher. I think he deserves either again, if you had the chance to make Dominic Cruz versus Jose Aldo and you didn't do it, then you should regret all your life choices and punch yourself in the face. It's they're right in front of us. They won great fights on back-to-back weekends, and whoever wins
Yeah,
that is, very title viable. Otherwise, you could give them Font.
yeah. I know the funny thing is we were just talking a week ago about Jose Aldo, and I agree with you. Like I wrote down Jose Aldo as my fight. It seemed like everybody wants the Dominic Cruz Jose Aldo fight. But it's funny, a week ago we were talking about TJ Dillashaw and Jose Aldo. I was saying like, how could you not make this fight next? Um, I don't know. That's why I love this sport. Um, Ben, are you ready to move on to the next fight? I want to know, are you ready to move on to the next
I
fight?
am ready to move on to the next fight.
All right. Do, do you have your shoe, Ben?
There's the shoe.
There it is. All right, Ben. There's my shoe. We are men of our word, so I have a Sam Adams lawn chair lager. What do you have?
I have Shiner Brewer's Pride, 7.5% alcohol by volume to kill those germs,
Okay.
and tastes like fruitcake. I like that I'm representing Texas and you're representing New England.
Yeah, of course, of course. So, cheers. Are we gonna do the spit too?
Do you spit before or after you pour?
I'm not sure. What do you say?
I'm spitting.
I'm spitting too. I'm not gonna be outshined. Here we go. Cheers. I don't know if you can see me pouring in there. Here we go. Not a drop. Didn't spill a drop.
I did the authentic spill shit all over myself, Shoey.
Well, I think that's how they do it in Australia.
Now I just want to be able to like walk back to my bedroom and have strangers like pour beers onto me from above. But
I'll say this. So obviously we did that. If you watch the preview show, we said anytime Tai Tuivasa fights that we will, if he wins, we will do a shoey. I did it last time he won. I'm making a tradition. I love everything about Tai Tuivasa. I didn't pick him to win. Neither one of us did.
nope.
But I love everything about this guy.
You know what? I've said this about a couple fights I was wrong about on this card, but this one more than any other, I knew really quick that I had made a terrible mistake.
So let me say this: you tweeted out that you picked Augustus Sakai to win, yet you wanted him to win, so you went into the shoey. Secretly, I was the opposite. I wanted to do the shoey.
Well, you wanted me to have to do the shoey. You've already done one.
Yeah, this one actually, I don't know if it was a spit. Maybe it didn't taste as bad as the last time. Maybe the spit. Maybe the Australians are onto something.
Well, you drank a Sam last time, so the difference must be the shoe.
No, same shoe.
Oh.
I think I went with the like a Oktoberfest maybe.
Oh.
I don't know when last.
So maybe like a lighter lager is not the. Huh.
No, I don't think I spit last time.
The
I think
spit.
I'm gonna say it's a spit. I think the Australians are onto something. Speaking on Australians onto something, or New Zealand. I'm sorry, New Zealand. Tai Tuivasa is now on a 4-fight winning streak. All joking aside, his skills have improved.
Nobody ever again can ask, does Tai Tuivasa train? He has been training. He's taking his career seriously. Like he lost those 3 straight, and he could easily have been let go. If he wasn't such a fun character, he probably would have been.
That's right.
Like if he was just, what's the name of the janitor from New England?
Not Fabio Charant. The Cape Verdean guy.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, if he was just another heavyweight dude, he probably would have been cut. But I think he realized that this fun train is going to stop unless I actually start winning some fights. He's turned things around. I kind of denigrated his 3-fight win streak because it was like Stefan Struve and Harry Hunsucker and Greg Hardy. Even if like Greg Hardy, it's not a bad win, but Augusto Sakai is for real, dude. Like, and whether like Sakai just never got out of first gear because he was scared of Tuivasa's power, like whatever the reason, this is a legit win. And dude, I might be 1 fight away from like ranking this guy. He's not just comic relief anymore.
Oh, so I'm reading the comments. Yeah. So someone pointed out green screen shoe. Yeah, I wasn't faking. That really was a shoe. It just obviously this is not my apartment. I have a green screen behind me, and I don't know the bottom of the shoe. I don't know. I'm not that techy to know why the shoe is disappearing at times, but apparently it was like disappearing. I could see it when I was doing it that it was disappearing a little bit. So. Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think Sakai had an absolute I don't know what his strategy was. That's like the first thing I remember. I said I hated Sakai's strategy. My exact notes was whatever it was, just circling the edge of the cage. And so the commentating team gets a lot of hate, but sometimes I agree with the commentary team, sometimes I don't. The team I really agreed on is it was a quick knockout, so they go to the booth team, and the booth team tonight was Chael Sonnen and Anthony Smith, and I think both of them had great assessment. Chael Sonnen said what he noticed about Tai Tuivasa other than before is his footwork, his movement, staying more agile, and then that he was measuring his shots, which makes you more accurate and learning range, not just winging things. And then Anthony Smith said just being more patient, not rushing things. I think both those guys were dead on. And then obviously he has huge power. He's got 4 wins in a row. I mean, I'm going to say something, and it's funny because this guy you mentioned about someone being cut. Like Tai Tuivasa is a star. You go to the weigh-ins, he had the highest pump in the entire weigh-ins.
Yep.
And Augusto Sakai was the only guy in the entire weigh-ins to get booed. I mean, there's some scatters for O'Malley and Garbrandt or whatever, but the person who got booed is the Gus Sakai, who doesn't talk shit at all.
Yeah, he doesn't talk at all. Shout out. I need to give a quick shout out to a couple people in the chat here. Boz for saying that Augusto Sakai is a galoot. Like, I'm so happy to have the word galoot sprung on me. And Alan McDonald for and D. Rendine for saying that he's Australian. Kai Kara Francis from New Zealand. But he's like.
I'm sorry. I mix them up all the time. I apologize to that area. I'm always going to get it wrong. I'm going to call the Australians as New Zealand and backwards. I apologize.
But I completely agree with you. He has star power. I mean, he's a big, sloppy heavyweight with a weightlifting belt tattooed on his midsection, who knocks people out and drinks beer out of shoes. Like, the crowd goes bananas for this guy.
It feels like Stone Cold when Stone Cold was winning the WWF, and he'd go up and the guy would toss some beers and he'd pour the beer. I mean, it has the same feel. And I mean, I'm looking at the comments. I mean, you made your son proud, so that was a really nice moment.
I don't think proud is the word, but
I'm gonna say proud. I'm saying that Adam and his friend. He said he just watched it live with my friends. So I think all Adam's friends are like, Ben is the cool dad. My son is not watching. He's 6 years old, so he's not watching it. But I love everything about it, and I mean the crowd goes crazy. We need characters, and he's memorable, and he could go on a 3-fight losing streak, and people are still gonna remember. They're gonna still root for him. They're gonna still want to do a Shoey. The run will not last long. Like I don't expect him to ever fight for a title or anything like that. But when you have a rise like this, just go with it and just take advantage of it while you can. So to me, Tai Tuivasa's next fight, I'm putting in the main event of a card.
Dude, Boz actually, we didn't even talk about matchmaking this fight.
We're gonna.
But Boz literally stole the one I was gonna say. Give him the loser of Derek Lewis and Kyle Dawkins, or Chris Dawkins.
Yeah, guess what? That's what I wrote down too.
Because you don't want to give him, because you don't want to just give him that Alexander Romanov and let all the fun end, because Romanov will just.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Imagine if it's Derek Lewis. Imagine the build-up.
Dude.
Imagine if it was.
Are both men drinking a Shoey no matter who wins?
Yeah.
Win or lose, both men are drinking a Shoey at the end of that fight.
How funny would Media Day? You know what? Actually, I wouldn't want it to be a main event, because a fight night main event doesn't get as much press than if you're even on the main card of a pay-per-view.
Yeah, and also what if it goes 5 rounds? Ugh.
Yeah. But think about main card of a pay-per-view, a big one, and there's media, and you had Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa cracking jokes during the press conference, and then, I mean, either that or a main event. But if you're putting Tai Tuivasa in the main event, I want it out in Australia. So we all had the same thing. If we just say this, you watch Twitter, and 95% of the people on Twitter are enjoying this Tai Tuivasa thing, but there's always that 5% that are like, it's bear in a cage, and it's disgusting, and this and that. Stop being a Karen. Just enjoy it. Have fun. Everybody have fun.
Stop being a Karen. I'm worried about him, because you probably don't need alcohol when you've just been concussed, especially now that he's drinking a 6-pack on his way back to the locker room. But if he's okay with it, who am I to tell a grown man what he can and can't do?
Did you? I love it. I love when there's people lined up in the front row with their shoes out, hoping he drinks about 40 beers on his way back. Oh, you just finished your fight camp. You've been training for it. You just beat someone up. I mean, it's his next fight shouldn't be in a cage though. We should have it go full WWE. His next opponent, they should fight in the crowd. WWE, where the crowd separates around them and they're fighting. And then they can do shoeys during the fight.
Just between rounds.
Yeah, or like in the fight, like you knock the guy down, you take a bear, you keep going. Just I don't know. I love everything about Tai Tuivasa, and except I don't pick him to win. But other than that, I love everything about him.
Yep. I made the wrong call as well on this one.
Speaking of love everything about him, Bruno Silva is now 3-0 in the UFC as he knocked out Jordan Wright. He now has 3 knockouts. Let's say this. Jordan Wright was putting it on him. And this is the 3rd fight in a row. Bruno Silva has had a dramatic knockout, a spectacular knockout. But in all 3 fights, there was moments where he wasn't looking good. That said, he has the ultimate neutralizer. He has the ultimate change the fight in an instant. We said this on the preview show. He just touches you, and it's lights out.
Yeah. He is one of the hardest one-shot hitters I've ever seen in that weight class.
Yeah,
like he has a more sophisticated overall game than the person I'm about to compare him to. And as soon as I make this comparison, I'm going to lose 80% of the chat because they're too young for this. But dude, it's like Drew McFedries. He can be losing the fight, and then he just touches the guy with something that doesn't even look flush, and it's like he hit him with a fucking tranq dart.
Yeah, the old Militich fighting systems. I thought you were going to say Houston Alexander, but yeah,
dude,
Drew McFedries.
Houston Alexander is for real.
Yeah. Do you think how many people do you think you remember as Drew McFedries other than me and you in this?
Oh, there's a couple old school guys in there, I bet.
Yeah, there's a couple old school. I know Bass is in there and stuff. So, and let's just point this out. This is not a new thing for Bruno Silva. Like, this isn't these guys who come in the UFC, they got a bunch of knockouts, and it was like, wow. Like, he's been doing it. He did this all, his whole run before the UFC. He's got, like, it's something insane, like 25 knockouts or something insane like that. All quick, early knockouts. His next fight has to be against a ranked opponent, correct?
I think it does. Or at least borderline ranked. Like my suggested matchup for him is someone who's kind of on the outskirts because I'm still slow in the roll. Like if you're getting pieced up by Jordan Wright and you had to pull something out of a hat, that's great, but that's not sustainable once you get into the top 10 at middleweight. I want to give him the winner of Mearshart and Dustin Stoltzfus, who are fighting in a couple weeks.
That 100% works for me. The name I wrote down was Krzysztof Jotko, just because of, like, Jotko's always a tough test for everybody. But, Mearshart, because of how intelligent he is, and Stoltzfus is, has been coming around. That works for me.
Dev Goes Fishing says Brad Tavares. I feel bad because Brad Tavares is the test for everybody coming up at 185, and he has been for like 10 years. But I like that too.
Yeah, that works for me. Like, to me, it's not necessarily the opponent; it's that range. We're all in the same range, the 12 to 18, range of middleweights. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of range, actually, let me ask you this question: how? He's now 3-0, and we're not rushing him. But how fast do you think the UFC's are rushing? Because Israel Adesanya is now on his second run through contenders. They announced that it's official, him versus Robert Whittaker. I mean, when your champion has, as we saw with Amanda Nunes, like when your champion has defeated everybody, 1-2 wins, and you're fighting for the title. 1-2 quality wins. I mean, Bruno Silva's gonna stop. Like, that's going to happen to him soon, right?
Yes. For all the reasons you mentioned, like, they're desperate for contenders. Also, when you have a guy who he's on the wrong side of 30, he is built like RoboCop, he's already had a 2-year USADA suspension, and he's losing most of his fights until he finds the knockouts, there's something brittle about that guy as a contender. Like, you can't afford to screw around. Otherwise he's going to get like guillotined by Mearshart, and that's going to set him back a whole other year. Like, I think they're going to rush this man to a title shot as fast as they possibly can. Kyle Lawheed in the chat says Bruno versus Poatan. That would be Alex Pereira, the kickboxing champ who beat Israel Adesanya in kickboxing. And I mean, other than the fact that Kyle wants like the venue to explode, I don't think they're going to do anything that might give Pereira a chance to lose.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Like he's on an even faster track to Adesanya. Um, Speaking of a contender in the middleweight division, Eric Anders got submitted by Andre Muniz in the very first round. Muniz is now 5-0 in the UFC. If we're counting, that's me counting the contender series. So going back to contender series, he's won. He's 5-0. He's got 4 first round submissions. He's ranked in the Sherdog rankings. I'm sure he's going to climb even higher based on this performance. Let me ask you this: he's obviously extremely serious submission threat. As I said, he's got 4 first round submissions in the UFC. He submitted Renato Jacare Souza. We just was talking about Bruno Silva. We were talking about Alex Pereira. Is Muniz the biggest threat to Israel Adesanya?
He's a unique threat to Israel Adesanya, but the real threats to Adesanya, like the things that seem to have given him pause so far, it's not the submission threat. It's the threat of just someone being able to lock him down and him not be able to get back up. I don't know what Muniz's top control really looks like, because he gets in these submission over position, like kind of scramble fest, and ends up on top because he's so good at it. So yeah, there's a possibility he could just rip Adesanya's arm out of the socket, but there's also the possibility Adesanya escapes and then just punts his head into the third row. But he is a big threat for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what I love about it, man. There's always like waves where we talk about a division that wasn't that long ago. We were talking about the UFC middleweight division and saying, hey, oh my God, Adesanya's got to stop fighting new, same guys twice, and there's no one new to fight. And we just named 3 guys that are interesting. Now, not ready yet, but shortly down the line, we just named 3 guys that he hasn't faced that are new blood, and there's probably other guys we haven't thought about yet.
Okay.
What do we do with Muniz?
I like putting him in against Dricus du Plessis. I believe that's the fight that was going to happen anyway. I still like it.
Okay.
He's another guy that's come in out of nowhere to fairly modest expectations and just punted those expectations. Yeah. And he's another guy that will be fast-tracked into the title picture with just a couple more signature wins. I like that fight.
Yeah, the other guy I wrote down that's similar, but kind of came out of nowhere. he came out of nowhere, or I should say, he came out of welterweight. Is I'm gonna see how real Chris Curtis is, and I'd put him against Chris Curtis. And I mean, the winner would be fighting top 10 guys after that.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Curtis has earned that kind of thing as well. And he's got something that threatens Muniz for as long as the fight goes.
Yeah. Speaking of the real deal, we knew that when Miranda Maverick met up with Aaron Blanchfield in the octagon, we would find out who's the real deal when it comes to prospects in the women's flyweight division, and that was answered with Aaron Blanchfield. She put on a wonderful performance. Talk to me, man.
I was dead wrong about this one. I said this fight didn't matter ahead of the thing, but ahead of the event, I said it on the preview. This fight doesn't matter. This is Conor versus Holloway 1. This is Poirier versus Holloway 1. It's so early in their careers. They'll meet down the road for bigger stakes. But all that said, Blanchfield was shocking. The amount that she is advancing between fights, the way her skill set is advancing between fights, just absolutely remarkable. And I did not expect her to have that big an advantage on the ground. Just did an incredible job. Because Maverick's ground game isn't bad.
No. I've never been a fan of her defensive wrestling, and that's the reason why I went with Aaron Blanchfield. But when we were breaking down this fight, like you said, you had this wrong, but you weren't confident in your pick for Miranda Maverick, as I picked Aaron Blanchfield. And overall, I actually had a really good night. I think I went 10-4. So that was, I think you went, 9-5? So we both had pretty good nights. I went 10-4. I was feeling really good until the main and co-main event. But the point is, we thought these girls were equally matched, that either one of these fighters would be that prospect in the division, and then even who won, we'd still be feeling really good about both of them. And I still think that could be the sense. Like I'm not off of Miranda Maverick, but Blanchfield made a statement that like there is levels to the prospects. Like one's a good prospect, and one's an all-time like prospect. You know, like you know, Baker Mayfield was a first-round pick in the NFL, and which is good. Obviously, Heisman Trophy winning, he's a good play. You know, I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he's not a bum. Peyton Manning was a first-round pick in the NFL.
Yes.
Like that was the difference. Like Aaron Blanchfield's a Peyton Manning, and I'm not saying Miranda Mavericks. Mayfield might not be it could even be a good first round. Like Matthew Stafford was a first round pick. Okay,
like going
Miranda Maverick could be Matthew Stafford. Aaron Blanchfield's Peyton Manning.
Like I'm trying not to gush, and I'm trying not to get ahead of myself and be Mr. Recency bias, but I'm trying to think back to the last time I saw a prospect of this age who was this promising in the skill set they had already and was making this kind of strides in between fights. And I'm seriously going back to like John Jones.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And remember, John Jones, other than me, by the way, other than me calling the Sherdog and telling him this, but John Jones didn't get the hype to probably his third fight in the UFC. Oh no, I think it was it was the second. I think it was Stephan Bonner was the second fight, right?
Guzmão was first, Bonner second, I believe.
Bonner.
Yeah.
Okay, so when he hit the spinning back elbow against Bonner, that's when people started getting hyped. And then I think it was like Jake O'Brien was the third fight, and then I think it was Matt Hamill was his fourth fight where he's dropping those elbows on Matt Hamill.
I believe that's correct as well.
And then Brandon Vera.
Was Vera the one right before the title shot, like before the short notice title shot?
No. He went on to take on. No, he went on a little bit longer run. He went on Vladimir Matchenko, I believe, and then maybe.
That's right.
I think it was Ryan Bader. He smoked Ryan Bader.
Okay. It's Guzmão, Bonner, O'Brien, Hamill, Vera, Matyushenko, Bader, and then Shogun. You were right.
Did I have that order?
You nailed it.
Did I have that order?
Yep.
Wow.
You nailed it.
Then was it Rampage? I swear I'm not looking.
After
Rampage Machida,
Yep.
Rashad Evans?
Yep, Rampage, Machida, Evans.
I'm going to keep going. Let's see how far I can go. Don't tell me. Rashad, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen?
Yep.
Really? Now I'm stuck. Gustafson one's coming. He fought Gustafson in before Glover Teixeira.
Yep.
But I don't remember if there's a fight in between. Vitor was before Chael.
Yep. Yeah, you got it right so far. It's Vitor, Chael, and then
Gustafson, Teixeira.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think after Teixeira was. I think it's a Daniel Cormier.
Yep.
And then it actually gets easy after that because then he gets all the drugs and he fights every once a year.
Yeah, it's easy to remember around the suspensions at that point.
He has St. Preux return,
Mm-hmm.
followed by Cormier 2,
Yep.
Gustafson 2.
Yep. Step on it, man. We're losing viewers.
Yeah, I just want to see if I can do it. Anthony Smith.
Yes.
Dominic Reyes. That's it, right?
Nope, you forgot Thiago Santos.
Oh,
I fumbled it on the one.
Ah! Anyways, there you go. We lost some viewers for that, but it was worth it. Somehow we're doing recapping all these shows. We never have enough time to go through John Jones' entire career. Aaron Blanford's incredible. Only 22. Mavericks, she's 24. She lost 2 fights in a row. I know the Macy Barber one was controversial, but she's in desperate need for a win. But I mean, Blanchfield. Let's do this real quick. I mean, she's got to be the hottest one in the division right now, right? Other than Shevchenko?
Well, yeah, I mean, Shevchenko is the champ. But certainly of the up and comers, she's by far the hottest one right now. And as far as what they do with her next, just keep her away from the others. Not Barber, not Casey O'Neill. Give her a veteran who's not in the immediate title picture. Give her Jillian Robertson, who just fought. Give her JJ Aldrich, but just keep her away from Barber and O'Neill.
Yeah, I mean, based on her ground game, I mean, what she looked like, keep her, get her against one of these ones that Shevchenko already beaten. That's not in the mix. I'm going Joanne Calderwood.
Oh man,
is that too high?
It's not too high. I think it's mean to Joanne.
Okay. Yeah, but that's my boxing promoter in me. Ryan Hall versus Derek Minner. Can we just say this to kind of speed up the time? Ryan Hall was just a terrible stylistic matchup for Derek Minner.
He's so good at what he does.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Nope. He's so good at what he does.
Okay. Randy Costa versus Tony Kelly. I'll say this. Tony Kelly had a perfect strategy against Randy Costa. He forced the action, forced Randy Costa to be pedaling, and then he started wrestling him. You're going against a guy that has had struggles with cardio, and then Tony Kelly I just really had a perfect strategy.
Perfect strategy. I think there has been a limitation exposed about Randy Costa at this point. He's a lot of fun, but he's still employing the game plan that got him the quick knockouts on the local scene, and it's just not flying against UFC level bantamweights.
Yeah, and he's got hurt to the body 2 fights in a row, which is worrisome. You don't have like a Donald Cerrone type thing going,
right. And it only worsens the main problem, which is that he gasses out and wilts after the first round, and if he's been zapped to the body, that's only going to happen even quicker.
Yeah. And Bass pointed out that it's not Joanne Calderwood, it's only Joanne Wood. I apologize to Mr. and Mrs. Wood for my mistake. And the first fight of the night, Jillian Robinson versus Priscilla Cachoeira. Robinson's stand-up still really bad. I'm not giving her a pass anymore, but her ground game is really slick.
Ground game is really slick. And
her top game, I should say, not her over.
Yeah,
her top game.
Top game. I mean, her bottom game is good for jiu-jitsu, but just hanging around on the bottom looking for subs is just not. Yeah, but I mean, yuck. Cachoeira missed weight. It did 2 blatant thumb to the eye gouges like some pro wrestling heel, and got tapped out. Priscilla Cachoeira's ground game is bad. It is bad news.
Yeah, and she was eye gouging, and she didn't even get Mark Smith watch your fingers.
How about that?
Yeah, go to Joe Rogan to call out that. I'm glad that he went hard on that. He didn't give her a pass. And back up, I forgot Devo. How do we forget this moment? We talked about we breezed through Randy Costa versus Tony Kelly. The best part of the Randy Costa Tony Kelly was, as Devo mentioned, Tony Kelly screaming, "I'm the best in the world." He beat Randy Costa. He's the best in the world.
He was referring to the fact that he now gets to drive back across the country with Andrea Lee again.
Not too bad. Yeah, we're not going down that route. But yeah, doesn't want to take an airplane. So you guys have it. We've covered all 14 fights. Let's get into the fun stuff. The Bulls and the Bears and the cut list. Let's do the Bulls first.
Okay.
I'll let you go first.
All right. Bulls.
No, so let me explain real quick in case people. The Bulls and Bears is a stock market reference. It's if things are going good for something, it's a bull stock means it's rising. Bears means it's going down. Bulls, we do it. Both these we do a 3-2-1 style like hockey. So number 1 being the biggest star of the night. So whose stock rose the most, Ben?
This is a crowded field. I mean, a lot of fighters made statements tonight.
So let's do this. Sorry to interrupt you, Ben. Let's do this. Julian Pena is number 1, correct?
Oh, yeah, what else could there possibly be? Yeah.
Okay, so Julian Pena is number 1. So give 3 new ones. It's no brainer. She gets her own award. I mean, come on. We're gonna talk about Julian Pena's win 20 years from now. So, give me three.
Okay. Aaron Blanchfield goes in there and, like we just finished talking about it, but makes a statement. This is a fight that is probably going to be referred back to for many years to come as this division continues to play itself out. Two of the top prospects in the division went head to head, and one just completely dominated the other. Tai Tuivasa. It was a close fight on the odds. It didn't look close once it was in the cage. He absolutely destroyed Augusto Sakai. This guy, who once was comic relief, has now won 4 straight and is knocking on the door of the top 10. And again, the stardom is already there. The fans love this guy. So as long as he keeps winning, or at least keeps winning enough that the UFC doesn't cut him, like, he's a made man.
And he keeps having us doing shoeys.
Keeps having us doing shoeys. If you're just checking in now, you missed that too. And I mean, there could be a ton for number one. I'm sure you're going to cover some of the ones I missed. So I'm just going to throw out Dominic Cruz, man. The guy, one of the last fighters we ever would have expected to still be relevant at age 37 after all of his injuries, given his style, just keeps knocking off top 10 guys and adapting his style to his waning physical gifts in the way you would expect from one of the most intelligent fighters in the history of the sport. Great night for Dominic Cruz.
Yeah, absolutely. And we already mentioned that Juliana Pena is the number one, so we're not even going to bother mentioning her. Guys, if you want to throw your bulls out there, I'll read them on the air. Me and Ben will read them on the air. I'll do mine. So my number 3 bull is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And what I'm talking about is we had Ryan Hall showing off BJJ, Aaron Blanchfield, Andre Muniz, and then co-main event, Juliana Pena and Charles Oliveira. So BJJ had a great night in the office. My number 2, Kai Kara France. Back-to-back wins in a division that isn't known for their power. Back-to-back KO wins will get you buzzing. And my number 1, very similar to your number 1 and Dominic Cruz, but I'm throwing Jose Aldo in, and that means I'm throwing WEC, as we had 2 former WEC champions. WEC will never die. WEC is still a huge winner with Jose Aldo and Dominic Cruz winning huge fights in back-to-back nights. Some of the Austin's and of course, we're assuming everybody's putting Pena as the number 1, but Austin throws in Nunes, Tai Tuivasa, Aaron Blanchfield. Devo goes fishing, throws out Blanchfield. Kai, as in Kai Kara France. I had a brain freeze for a second, and of course Juliana Pena. If you guys keep them going, we'll continue to read them. Let's move over to the Bears. Now, these who had a bad night, I'll go first this time. I'm going Cody Garbrandt. This is a guy that he's lost 5 out of his last 6. He's been knocked out 4 times recently. We're talking about losing now in 2 different weight classes. He's not in contention in either weight class. Not a good run for Cody Garbrandt. My number 2 is American Top Team. Manny Nunes, Dustin Poirier, the top 2 fights. They went 0-2. Not a good night to be American Top Team, which is considered by most the number 1 MMA team in the world. And my number 1 is actually very similar to my number 2. I'm actually going Dustin Poirier, and the reason I'm saying Dustin Poirier is that's this deep division. That's a division that it's a long line to get a title shot. He's had 2 chances. He had a golden opportunity to win this one, and he fell short again. And it wouldn't as it is a deep division. We talked about it wouldn't shock us if Dustin Poirier fights for the title day and wins. It also wouldn't shock me if Dustin Poirier never fights for a title again. So to me, Dustin Poirier's stock really fell. Ben, who are your Bears?
Oh, man. Number 3 is going to be Dustin Poirier. With Amanda Nunes, you strongly suspect she's going to get an immediate title rematch if she wants it, and either way, she still has her other title. Every time Dustin Poirier loses one of these fights, it might be his last chance to get an undisputed belt. That's gotta feel bad, but it was what it was. Like, he fought a good fight, and he lost. He came up short again. Number 2, I'm going to go with you on Garbrandt. I won't even reiterate that one. My number one bear is the guy who bet $318,000 on Amanda Nunes at minus 900 odds. He bet $318,000 so he could win like $27,000. I think somebody needs to go do a welfare check on this man to see if he's okay. Because either
if you're betting like that kind of money, you're extremely rich.
But no, here's the thing. If you're some Jeff Bezos type and that's the money you just found in your couch cushions, like if you have $318,000 just to play around with, then you bet it on Pena.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Like that dude.
He bet like the worth of my house.
It's brutal night at the office for whoever that man or lady was.
I'll read some of the other people's. We didn't get Bass's. He had a couple bulls, so he's also had a good night. He went with Cara France, Tai Tuivasa, Charles Oliveira. Now moving over to the bulls. Devo goes Cody Garbrandt, Augustus Sakai, Amanda Nunes. Bass goes Cody Garbrandt, Augustus Sakai, Amanda Nunes. Devo points out that Sakai is also AT&T, so ATT, not AT&T, not the phone line. Austin goes Nunes, Sakai, Cody Garbrandt. Kyle points out that Masvidal was supposed to be on this card, and he probably would have got beat up by Leon Edwards. So, really bad night for ATT. Let's do the cut list. So the way the cut list works is if you're on both mine and Ben's cut list, we give the UFC permission to cut them because the UFC listens to us. I have 2 names, Ben. How many do you have?
I believe I only have 1.
Okay. You read me a name. I bet you we're in agreement, and then I'm going to give you the one that's going to shock you.
Priscilla Cachoeira.
Yep, that's who I am. She was on a 2-fight winning streak heading into
I don't care.
But now she's 2-4. The eye gouging did it for me.
Yep. Miss weight, lose bad, eye gouge, you're gone.
Oh, yeah. We didn't even mention miss weight, too. If she did it one time, you could almost say, oh, maybe it was an accident. But she did it twice.
Exactly.
The one I would have cut, I'd cut Cody Garbrandt. And we already talked about, all the losses. He looks washed up. Sometimes you just got to donate people to bare knuckle boxing. And Cody Garbrandt fits in perfect with that crew.
Yeah.
But Ben is nicer to Cody Garbrandt, so he makes it. We already did the grade. So, Ben, most important thing, who is your listener of the night?
Oh, man.
Good crew tonight.
I don't want to be accused of favoritism or nepotism, but Adam Duffy sent me a reaction video of him and his buddies watching our Shoey. So, I mean, that's...
Oh, you got to send that to me.
I'll send it once we're done here.
So Adam and his entire buddies, you guys win.
Yeah, but it was a star-studded cast tonight. Nice to see D. Rendine, I believe is new. But then, Dev Goes Fishing, Kyle Lougheed, Boss, of course, our hardcores are here. Yeah, Dev was killing it. Dev was going to be my pick, but he didn't send us a video. So I will agree with you and go with Adam Duffy, Ben's boy, and all his friends. So shout out to those guys. There you guys have it. We've covered all the fights. We got one more card for the new year. Actually, I'm previewing a one championship card if you're into one championship. I'm on a nice streak. I haven't lost a fight in 3 or 4 events, so make sure you check that out. But me and Ben will be back. We have, to end the year, the ultimate Duffy versus Shillan challenge. Houston's own versus the police officer. I bet you guys can guess how we're going to pick this fight. Ben, you have something to say to us before we leave? No, really, just thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for your questions, your comments, your hot takes. It wouldn't be the same without you.
Yeah, and guys, thanks so much, man, for always being you guys. Oh, we didn't do the bonuses. People say
I don't know the bonuses
tonight. Oh, anybody have the bonuses? I mean, I'll just guess off the top of my head right now. Juliana Pena obviously is getting a bonus.
Oh man, there are 8 bonus winners.
Oh, well, just name it to it. We don't have to guess. Just let's tell us.
All right. Performance of the night, Charles Oliveira. Performance of the night, Juliana Pena.
Okay.
Performance of the night, Cara France. Performance of the night, Sean O'Malley.
Yeah.
Performance of the night, Tai Tuivasa.
Okay.
Performance of the night, Bruno Silva. Fight of the
Okay.
night, Dominic Cruz and Pedro Munoz.
Wow. So, okay. So, like somewhere. So, who got a stoppage and didn't get any money? Is there anybody who got a stoppage and didn't get any money?
Andre Muniz.
Oh my lord, poor Muniz. Everyone got a. Imagine being that poor guy.
And dude, he didn't get a bonus after tapping out Jacare.
Yeah,
that's like twice in a row.
And he asked for it this time too.
Tony Kelly didn't get a bonus.
Yeah, Tony Kelly, Jillian Robinson, they didn't get any stuff. But Andre Muniz, poor guy, toss him something. Anyways, let's have it. Thank you so much. I know it's really late in the morning. We love all you guys. Make sure you like this video, share it, and come back next week as we do this all again. Talk to you next.